This episode of Beyond the Closing is brought to you by First United Land Transfer.
Hey everyone, this is Lizzie from First United coming to you with another episode of Beyond the Closing. I have Justin Brown from Lighthouse Realty here with me today. Thank you, Justin, so much for coming in. I really appreciate you coming to hang out with me and just chatting.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to be here.
Sounds good. Perfect. So I'm just going to dive right in then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tell me a little bit about how you became where you are here at Lighthouse.
Yeah, so I'll go back to when I guess first got my license and so forth. So yeah, I was out of college, went to Penn State. I got a job at Air Products here in Allentown. Mm-hmm. The funny thing there was actually I knew of Air Products and didn't want to work at Air Products. But there was this awkward situation at a recruiting event at Penn State where I was like, I have 3 seconds to either say hi to these people or walk in another direction, or I'm going to be very rude. And I couldn't see who I was looking for at this like networking event. So I was like, hi, I'm Justin. It was like very uneventful. They're like, hey, and ended up getting an interview with them. It was right around 2010 when not like having a job was not a given. Yeah. So like before the interview, I was like, I should probably take this seriously. Long story short, had an internship with them. It was fantastic. And, really grateful that I had that opportunity. Then ended up having a full-time job with them coming out of college. But yeah, so I found Allentown from growing up in central Pennsylvania through Air Products.
So you're not from the area though? Like no, you're not from Lehigh Valley?
I'm a Pennsylvania boy, but not from Lehigh Valley.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so State College has got some of the similar vibe as Lehigh Valley, but it's just a lot smaller. So yeah, when I came out here, I was like, oh, this has like Beltsville and Nakamixon, and that was similar to State College where I grew up being kind of more outdoorsy. But yeah, just loved it here working at Air Products. So then, but somewhere in there, like real estate was in my blood. My dad was a home builder.
Oh, okay. Like literally in your blood. Yes, like you grew up like hearing like how the whole situation. Okay.
Yeah, and then later I'll talk about like real estate investing and investment properties. But I found out later like my dad was, more into that than I realized. He more like as I grew older, he was more just a custom home builder. But still, I was like, this is in my blood. So I'm working just a corporate America job, ended up buying a house. And I actually, like, before I was even, again, a realtor or part of my business, I was, like, telling people about my realtor. And I had, like, a house owning club at Air Products. Like, we met, like, over lunch once a week or maybe once a month or something like that. And we talked about, like, changing air filters and stuff like that.
Just, like, home improvement stuff that you would do, like...
Yeah. It was just, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us. It was, like, the homeowners club. Like, everybody owned a home at Air Products because they're all, like, older than me. But I thought it was so cool.
That is awesome. Yeah. That's, like, talk about taking, like, initiative. Like, that is so cool.
It was really fun. And I learned a lot. And and so I was, like, talking to my realtor to them. I was like, oh, you got to use Pat. And you should get her on the show, by the way. She's awesome. Pat Spitzer. Shout out to her. Pat and Steve. But yeah, so then this is going somewhere, I promise. There ends up being this like big round of layoffs. Okay. And I get laid off from my job. And at this point in time, I have a house. I have some roommates. And living in my own home is like my cheapest place to live because my rent was like, my mortgage was paid by my friend's rent. Yeah. So then I somehow in there, I had this idea to start a nonprofit to help like inner city kids doing like building projects or home improvement projects. And this was actually a thing that was actually going on in South Carolina. My old pastor was now the director of an organization called Homeworks of America, and they were doing that, service projects for low-income people's houses, and then, but having kids help out, like, not kids, but like, I don't know, 11-plus-year-olds. Sure. Safe, but doing, they had these camps where they would, like, help improve people's houses. Yeah. So I get laid off December 4th of, I think this was 14. And I'm swinging a hammer, helping replace a 100-year-old lady's roof in South Carolina, like 3 weeks later.
Okay.
And where real estate kind of comes into this is the interesting thing about your realtor is Pat and Steve Spitzers were one of the first people I thought to call when I found out I got laid off.
Okay.
And they were like, we'll buy, like, let's meet up. Like, we want to find out how we can help you. So they bought me pizza and a beer, and they just, both of them, sat across the table and were like, how can we help you?
Yeah.
And I told them about this crazy idea. I told them about, like, kind of get back to my roots with building projects and things like that. And they knew my pastor, Pastor Jim, and they were like, why don't you go down and talk to Pastor Jim, find out what's going on, and let us know. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So I come back from South Carolina, and I actually felt a renewed kind of calling to Lehigh Valley, because my pastor Jim actually offered me a job with HomeWorks, and I had like nothing really tying me to the area at that point. And I could have just sold my house and moved down there, and it could have been awesome, but I felt like I was supposed to be in Allentown. So called up Pat and Steve, and I was like, hey, so I want to do this thing, but I think I should get some more experience in the industry. How do I get my real estate license? And she was like, it's a lot of work and everything. And so she introduced me to her broker. And so that nonprofit doesn't exist to this day, but
there's still time.
Right. Tons of time. But we can talk more about what Lighthouse is doing that's very similar to where my heart was with that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, let's see. What was your original question?
Well, let me interject actually real quick. Did you know your Pat before they helped you buy your house?
No.
So you really just had that connection. Like, they helped you get your house, and then you like grew from there. Like, you really built that connection. Because I'm not gonna lie, if I were laid off, I don't think my realtor would have been the first person that I would call. So like when you say that, I'm like, my mind's going because that's a different train of thought than I would have. But I see where you went with it, and that's awesome. Like, obviously it was so beneficial.
Yeah, totally. So I had interacted with them a couple of different ways. I knew that they knew Pastor Jim. I knew that they were well connected. They also, like, I don't know how much they'd reached out to me after the close. And again, that homeowners club, like, they were on my mind.
Yeah.
I'm sure they asked for referrals or sent, I know they, like, even after I became a realtor in their office, I still scolded them when I didn't get that calendar in the mail, like with their business card to put on my fridge. I was like, where's my calendar? They're like, we're not making any money off you, dude. Like, come on.
That's awesome.
So they were, for whatever reason, they were top of mind. And
that's awesome that relationship grew, though.
It was,
literally, that you were not forgotten. That they didn't just get you your house and then move on to the next. Like, that you had that. That's so fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't think they had really anything to gain. I was like, well, maybe they thought I was going to sell my house because I got laid off. I don't know, but like, I do know that, like, they were just like 100% genuine in like, how can we help you out?
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So, and they had actually been, the interesting thing was, the reason I got connected with them, I think I'm the only person to have like found my lender before I found my realtor.
Okay.
And I know like lots of lenders like, oh, we wish we could give our realtor partner leads. But like, so I was connected to Sandra, my still good friend and lender to this day, through a friend who was like, before you can buy a house, you need to see if you're approved to buy one. And then she referred me to Pat and Steve, and then Pat and Steve helped me buy my house. But yeah, I mean, I think the two of them were just also a really great pair. I ended up like doing showings with Steve. He and I like kind of jived well, and then Pat was like the negotiator, kind of like tactician.
Nice.
Once I knew that I wanted to buy a house. And one thing I always remember, I always tell people this, like, it was the third house we saw, but it was like the first outing where it was just me and Steve. And we went in this house, and I just wasn't feeling it, but I didn't know what the etiquette was. Like, how do you be like, I'm done?
Right, yeah.
And he was like, if you're not feeling it, all you have to do is just tell me, hey, Steve, I'm not feeling it, and we can head out. And I think he could kind of tell, but I was just like...
Like from your like demeanor and just like everything,
Yeah, he's like, we can head out if you're not feeling it. I get it. It's okay. And this is back when there was like lots of houses to look at.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, we can keep moving. We don't need to spend an hour at every house. So, yeah.
Okay, so how did we go from where you were to like where you are now with Lighthouse? Like, how did that transition happen?
Yes. So I had a really great time at Weichert. Great company still to this day. So Pat and Steve introduced me to Jim. Jim was a broker at the time at Allentown office there. And yeah, just I had a really great time being an agent. So the funny thing was, this actually kind of goes back a little bit, but like real estate investing was kind of in the back of my mind.
Okay.
So at that homeowners club, I remember this guy named Derek who had like an A2 unit. It wasn't like crazy. It wasn't like he had like an apartment building. But I actually tried, like in that like wanting to start a nonprofit, I also tried to take my like severance package, which was probably like $6,000, which was a lot at that time.
Sure.
But wasn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. I tried to go buy an investment property. And Sandra was like, 'cause I called her up too, and she's like, so you found another job already? And I was like, no. And she's like, so you kind of need a job for me to loan you money. And it was a $60,000 property. It was not a lot.
Sure.
But yeah, so somewhere in there, in the back of my mind was real estate investing.
Yeah.
So
you went for it though. You tried. At least
tried.
you can say you tried.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, I can respect the try. That's
absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah. And I still think about that to this day of like having that spirit of just ask. Like you miss 100% of the shots, you don't take it.
You weren't offended by it. You're like, oh, I get it. That makes sense. I should probably have like.
Well, so then you can probably fill in the pieces. I go get a job as a realtor, and she's like, Justin, now I can't loan you money for 2 years because you're in a commission-based position, and versus W-2 at Air Products.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, but
still trying.
Yep, still trying. So. The cool thing in here, the story is I found my wife, Corey, I met her about 6 months after getting laid off. So if you think December, get my license in February, I met her in that summer, and then I go full-time in real estate. I was actually like swinging a hammer under the table for a buddy of mine as like a contractor, like kind of part-time through that just to pay that, the few $100 that were my utilities and so forth.
That's in your blood, building and stuff like
yes.
that, like with your dad, being the builder. That definitely, I'm sure it came like natural.
Absolutely, and it was a lot of fun, and I still look back really fondly on those months of like, I'd open up my wallet and whatever cash I had, I was like, either I can pay for groceries or gas or flowers for Corey. And sometimes I picked wildflowers and put gas in my tank and went down, saw her. We were like sort of long distance. She was in Maryland. Just trusting God to, provide for me and the next step. I went full time in real estate. I had no business doing that, but I was like, I need to give this everything, and I couldn't be divided.
Sure.
In October of 2015. And then we end up getting married the next May, and that September, so kind of fast forward a little bit, I still had that bug about real estate investing, and I talked to a buddy of mine, and he's like, you should talk to this guy, Bryce. So I talked to this guy, Bryce, and it was a really pivotal conversation. I still remember where we were at. It's the Joint in Bethlehem. It's that little hole in the wall. And he gave me a couple really good pieces of advice, but also a couple books. Okay. And those books, Think and Grow Rich, and Think and Grow Rich, The Richest Man in Babylon, and those two. And I ended up, my wife and I had like a second honeymoon. Like it was the only honeymoon we had that was like where we actually traveled. Sure. Was booked for that September. So I ended up having just tons of time to read. And those books really helped me actually excel in my real estate career in selling. Okay. Even though I'd reached out to Bryce about real estate investing, like how do I buy my own investment property? So So you fast forward a little bit, basically just being an agent, kind of keeping an eye on what it would look like to buy something or partner with somebody. And I ended up actually partnering with this this more seasoned investor that I met at a Bible study. And he and I partnered on an office building. And we kind of set it up as a co-working space.
Okay.
It's still there, 40 South. If you need to rent a conference room or an office, it's there. But through that, I got to just rub shoulders with Rich on real estate investing. And he would be like, oh, like, how's the market these days? And so on and so forth. And because of that project, I found out, and because of working with him, I found out about this website called Bigger Pockets.
Okay.
And they have a podcast that talks just about real estate investing. And through that, I learned about hosting real estate investing meetups.
Okay.
And so we did that at our office building as just a way to get people through the door. So I ended up meeting a bunch of people there. I'm just kind of soaking it in. And I started to kind of put the pieces together of how being a real estate agent fits with the investing and how they actually kind of both translate back and forth. So then to just kind of get to the Lighthouse part of things, I was helping some different investors as an agent.
Okay.
And I felt like we would kind of get things going and I'd find out what their goals are. And then once they would close, I'd kind of hand them off to some property manager or to their own devices or whatever, and just not be able to continue with them in that story. And I think it's like the opportunity that a lot of good realtors have is they want to be a guide to their client.
Yeah.
I think some realtors that are not my favorite people are ones that feel like they're the hero of the story. It's like, you're not the one that's paying for the house. You're not the one signing that escrow deposit check. You're writing the offer, but like if something doesn't happen, big whoop. You got E&O to protect you even if you make a mistake. Like
sure.
So I think once you realize that you're the guide and not the hero to the story, then you can kind of, I think, really truly help your client because you can help empower them to make the best decisions for them. So yeah, where I then went from there was I kind of was kind of at a juncture where I was like, I had one switch in I only wanted to make one switch. And I was not unhappy at Weichert, but I was like, if there's a switch, I want to be for really, really good reasons. I'm sure realtors at least know they're always called by different brokers and recruited and so forth. So it was funny, actually, I had one buddy that like I was in touch with. He had started his own brokerage. And I was like waiting for months, like why he didn't ask me to join. Yeah. And
were you feeling some sort of way?
What's that?
Were you feeling like you were waiting? Were you like waiting just like out of curiosity, or like am I like were you getting in your head?
Say that again.
Like were you like getting in your head like, oh, like why? Like I would have been thinking about it. I would have been like, well,
I was a little like I was like, I wonder if he doesn't think I could cut it on his
like
team,
I would have been like doubting myself or something. Like what? Like am I not good enough for you? There's something. Do you know what I mean? Like I would have been thinking.
And finally it did come up, and I was like, thank you. I mean, the answer is no, but thank you.
Right? Yeah. Not that you were going to take him up on it, but no, I agree. I would have. My mind would have been going.
And that was where I realized I was like, oh, I actually want to start my own thing. And
when you saw somebody that you knew?
When I was like, why would I say no to Dale? Like, Dale was awesome. Dale was like, he and I had a lot of the same values.
Like, it wasn't a personal thing that you were saying.
No, it was just like, and that was when it clicked. And I actually wrote down like the fees with Weichert, I wrote down the fees with Dale, and and then I just wrote me, and I very naively wrote 0. I was like, I should just do my own thing. I was paying for my own assistant at the time, and but really going back to the partnering with your client thing was I felt like I wanted to provide that next step in the property management. And whether it wasn't that I wanted to get into property management, but I wanted to just complete the picture for my client.
Like to continue that relationship and not just like drop them off and, you're on your own. Like you wanted to really.
Yes.
Like
really
you were
be
guided.
Like, I'm with you for the long haul.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure the timing of this, but the Lighthouse concept was in the back of my mind.
Okay.
I'll tell you that story.
Yeah.
If we have time for that.
Yeah, of course we do.
I'm a big fan of Grant Cardone.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to go down to 10X Growth Con in Miami, and this would have been 19. Mm-hmm. Ended up driving there, which I don't necessarily recommend you do.
Okay.
But I say that to I was very committed to getting to this conference. I also knew I had strongly guessed from watching his social media that he was going to parachute into the Marlins Stadium for the beginning of the conference, and I was 100% correct.
Okay.
So I was like, I have to get there.
You needed to see it. If it was happening, you were going to see it. I actually got in an
accident on my way, just past Hamburg.
Stop.
And I Rich, my investor buddy that I was partners with, he drove out and picked me up. I got in my wife's car and I turned around and started again.
You weren't stopping.
I was not stopping.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually made phone calls to different friends I had in different time zones to let me stay awake through driving through the night.
Yeah. That's a long trip. How long did it
It's 18 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
not as far as you think to drive all the way down to Miami, but Florida is the real kicker.
Yeah.
You get to Florida in 12 hours.
Oh,
it's another
really?
6 hours to get all the way down to Miami.
You're so close yet so far away.
Yeah. And it's just straight. And so, I ended up finally called my buddy in Alaska. And I think I had 45 minutes of dark, where no one was awake. But then I switched back to East Coast and I called my buddy that I know gets up at 5 in the morning. And he was just I was like, hey. He's like, hey. And I was like, I'm alive. He's like, great. I'm going to go work out. I'll see you later. I was like, cool. I'm going to make it my last hour. And so 10X Growth Con, it's just a fun story. My wife was so nervous and I ended up sleeping in my car each night. But I was like, I have to be at this conference. And I ended up, it was the sub point of John Damon's talk at that conference where he was like, don't discredit your window shoppers. And he used the example of this bag, like a nice designer purse or bag or whatever. And he's like, someone might come in that you might feel like, can I help you? Doesn't look like they could afford, something like that. He's like, if you have that attitude, you are, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Versus if you have the attitude of not patronizing someone or giving them a discount or whatever, but treating them with respect and dignity and, having vision for their future. That bag looks great on you. I know that you'll be back in here when you can afford it. And just being positive. He's like, that person will go out and sell you 3 more bags before they're even able to come back in and buy that themselves. So don't discredit your tire kickers or your window shoppers. And that got me thinking, who are the real estate version of that? And that's where the Lighthouse model came up with. I was like, you have your seekers that are people that have kind of an idea of real estate, but their credit's bad, or they have no money, or they have no idea where to start. And I was like, how could they not need, in my mind now, what we call a Lighthouse Realtor? And so I kind of came up with a model on my drive back from that conference.
You had some time to think about it.
I had 19 hours.
Yeah, you certainly had time to think about it.
Yes. So so it just started to click and I was thinking through and I don't know where the concept of the Lighthouse came about. But the concept of the Lighthouse is that it's the only fortress that exists to protect people on the inside and on the outside. Because if it were a pile of sticks, the lighthouse keeper wouldn't be there very long. But the reason for it wouldn't be there if it weren't to serve the people that are out there at sea who are doing their calling. So that was where I was thinking, the kind of combining the window shopper with what is their goal? What are they trying to achieve? What's our house buyer, our window shopper for buying a house? What's their vision? And so I kind of came up with a model, and that was Seeker, which is kind of marked by discovery, and that's where your realtor will work with you on what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Are you trying to move an elderly relative in with you where you need an in-law suite? Is your family growing and you need more bedrooms? Are you moving because of a job or something like that? Are you selling because of death or a divorce? So what is it that's going on that we can kind of understand the context around before we just start going and looking at 3-bed, 2.5 baths in Parkland.
Right.
So that's seeker, then buyer. I'll just buyer, owner, keeper. And the idea is like, how do we create lighthouse keepers?
Yeah.
And so lighthouse keepers are people who have, who know that they're living out their calling.
Okay.
Whether that's, again, having a safe space for your growing family, whatever, maybe it's buying an investment property to build wealth for your family and for your kids. So that was just the idea that was, again, sparked at that conference. And I was like, then you take the idea of what I was already experiencing with wanting to finish that story, and I was like, we need to do this.
Yeah.
So started Lighthouse.
And like you're just making connections with everybody. Like what I'm getting is like that you're really trying to like connect and just help people and not just have them come in, sell their house and then be gone. You know what I mean? Like you're looking at what they need as like a whole picture and not necessarily what they think they may need. Like, right? Like you can really help them like dive into like their specifications of what is really beneficial for them.
And it's so much easier to do that when you have the full picture in mind.
Right.
And I was thinking that like there's lighthouse realtors out there, even though they might work for Weicker, they might work for whoever. But a lighthouse realtor in my mind is someone that kind of embodies these principles. And I wanted to put it in black and white. Actually, I was kind of thinking about this even before I wanted to start more on brokerage. I was thinking about it like as a designation, like so-and-so with, whoever, a lighthouse agent.
Okay.
And that might still be a thing, but I went the route of starting Lighthouse Realty.
Sure.
But yeah, like how much better and more authentic can that product be when you've actually taken time to figure out like and listen like to what they actually want.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you 100%. Listening and getting to know them and their needs. Like a lot of times people don't know what they might need. Like I think I'm right all the time and that I know exactly what I want and need. And my husband will be the first one to tell you that I think that. But as we all know, that's not necessarily the case. Like it really, having a professional who can listen and who knows more than the average person.
Absolutely.
Because I don't, that's for sure.
And who should know, in some ways, in that instance, a lot of times people are looking for a realtor to help them with the the I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And versus the being an agent that just is like, well, they're asked to look at this, so like I'm just going to try to get the sale as quick as I can.
Right.
And not putting that context behind it. But then the other thing too, the next step of the model is buyer, and that's buying into the plan.
Sure.
And that's like action, but you can take action so much better when you have the clarity of what you're actually trying to achieve. And then from buyer to owner is mastery. And that's the idea. And that was going back to the window shopper thing. I was like, where do realtors hang out? They hang out in like someone that's pre-approved, and then they ditch you. Maybe you get a Christmas card after the closing. But I was like, what then would it look like for us to help you with mastery and then to continue to stay in touch with you where you're actually shining your light for the next person.
Right.
And that's like, I think when we learn something, it doesn't really click until we turn around and share that with somebody else. And I had that done with me. Rich, who had 100 units, was hanging out with me who had nothing. And he was like, let's partner. You're young and you got some ideas. I have some experience. And I got him just naturally, organically sharing what he had learned with me. So I had that modeled to me, and I was like, this, we need to capture this, put this in black and white, and teach this.
And now that's how you teach your agents then. How many agents are on your team?
I think we're around 16 agents.
Okay.
Not all producing full time, but
sure, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
And then, but they all have the Lighthouse concept and everything like that.
Yeah, it's on the back of all of our business cards and
spreading the word and everything like
and
that.
So forth. Yeah, and just I think it's just and the thing too is this applies to anything.
Yeah.
This could be you being a hairdresser. It could be buying a large multi-unit. I was actually doing it myself yesterday, where I'm under contract to buy a big deal myself, and I had some snags come up, and I said, all right, let's take a step back. And do the discovery. Why am I doing this? And I was like, I really would like to benefit Allentown and being a great landlord on this bigger property. I want to provide some opportunities to grow myself. And I just went through this list of discovery. And then now I have a much better action plan that I can take action on in the buying. And then I also know, so I kind of knew where I was.
Yeah.
And then, there's other things where, maybe you could say on the model, like, maybe I'm at the lighthouse keeper of like being an agent, but maybe on being a broker, I'm more in the owner and I'm learning how to master this. It's kind of like, it's a great way for you to say like, where am I at in this setting?
But you're literally living the model though that you have. Like you're not like just selling it to people. Like it's not like a scheme. Like you're just trying to sell to people so they, make money or anything like that. You're literally living it like yourself. Like you're taking a step back to evaluate yourself and live it, which I think is so awesome. Like,
absolutely.
It's authentic. It's
and
I
wish I would do it more. I'm like, oh shoot, I should have thought about this. Am I in the owner phase? Am I in the buyer phase? Like, is this something I'm trying to master, or do I need to like shut up and just take action? Right. I already know. Like I already looked at it, or is it? You know what? I've done everything, and could I share with somebody about what I just learned? Could I share real time that I'm like, shoot, I like hit some snags here that I was not expecting. Let me bring someone along on that. Be a little vulnerable, but be a little, transparent. And then how could they grow and so forth. So and then we all grow more when we do, share kind of real time what's going on in our lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% can see where you're coming from without a doubt. And I'm just so in awe right now. I really love the fact that you lived the model yourself. The fact that you took time to just evaluate your own self. Like you said, you can relate it to anything in life. I wish I took the time to sit back and evaluate things that I do, but we don't always do that.
It's hard.
It's harder easier.
Right now because everything's thrown at us. Even like this morning, it wasn't until... I just went for a long walk and I just, put my phone away and was just letting myself kind of wander and think about it and pray about it. And that was when like, I was able to think like, well, okay, why was I actually in this to begin with? And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm on the seeker step. And I started thinking through it that way. But yeah, it's so hard to take the time. And another thing, like, I don't know, I journal a lot, and that's another really great way to just slow down. And that analog method is like slow on purpose. People are like, it's so slow. It's like you can't reference it. I'm like, exactly. When you're typing, like you could type up an email, but like bing, an email comes in. Like no one can unless you reach over the table and start writing on my journal while I'm writing on it, you can't. No one else can input into this. Except for me. Yeah. So it's a great space to do that self-evaluation, discovery, and my coach calls it perspective before planning. Like get some perspective, and then you can lay the plan into action.
That's awesome. I'm a huge list person. It's funny, they make fun of me because I have lists for everything. I write everything down. I saw it when you saw that you brought that in. I was like, yes, like we're gonna connect well because absolutely. I'm the exact same way. Like I can type it, but it's not the same. Like I need to have everything in order, and then of course
And our brains learn better too, or hold it better because we like physically did something. Yeah. It like connects more.
I feel like I'm holding myself accountable. Like if I'm writing that list down, I'm gonna like do my hardest to check everything off. And it might not happen in the one day that I want it to, but I agree with you 100%. Writing it down and just getting it out there is so much more efficient than just typing it up or anything like that, for sure.
That's awesome.
If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in contact with you or your team? Anybody on your team, I'm sure you'd be happy to.
Definitely hit me up, Justin Gary Brown on Instagram. That's a great way to get a hold of me. And our website has everybody from our team on there, Lighthouse Realty LV at .com. Perfect. And thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with me. I certainly appreciate it. I know the weather wasn't the best this morning, but that's okay. A little foggy, but you got here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Lighthouse keeper, keeping an eye on the sky, but glad to be here.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming in. And then that was another episode of Beyond the Closing, and we'll see you next time.